Hi, my name's Eric Korpela, and today I'm going to talk to you about some of the difficulties with how we determine sensitivity of radio technosignature searches. In other words, what we used to call radio SETI. If you look at a paper about a radio technosignature search, you're likely to find a version of the radiometer equation. This relates some of the parameters of the instrument and the signal-to-noise threshold with the power or power density a signal would need to cross this threshold. This is usually presented as a single number, as the overall sensitivity of the observation rather than something that could vary with frequency or any other signal parameter. There are a few problems with this. First, what's presented is usually an oversimplified version, which ignores how a real instrument would respond to a real signal of finite bandwidth drifting in frequency due to the acceleration of the receiver and potentially drifting in frequency due to the motion of the transmitter. Second, it presumes that all signals from an ETI that are above threshold will be flagged as candidates for further investigation. This could be a bad assumption, as the thresholding is the first step in a long pipeline that removes the vast majority of above threshold events from further consideration. So how can we determine the sensitivity of an observation? One idea is to use the power of the signals that get through all stages of the pipeline up to the point of manual investigation. This is typically less than about 1,000 signals. Perhaps the power of those signals is indicative of the sensitivity. Since the bulk of those signals will be due to interference, it's certainly indicative of the power of the RFI that is masking our ability to identify true ETIs. Unfortunately, the power distribution of such signals is rarely reported in publications. It's possible that this method is too pessimistic. Perhaps real signals detected at the threshold will always make it to the top, but maybe not. How could you tell that a real signal isn't getting thrown out with the junk? Another idea is that your sensitivity can be determined by what you report and reobserve. Certainly, if there was a pulsar survey, you could use the statistics of the pulsars that were detected and their distribution in power and period to determine the sensitivity of the survey. But this is an overly pessimistic method for use in SETI, as there have been no detections to date. It implies that the sensitivity in the Ohio State survey is the power of the WOW signal, which is a very strong signal, and that any observation that reports no signals has no sensitivity. The problem is that there are too few ETIs to determine the detection statistics. How do we solve this problem? Well, obviously, we need some extraterrestrial signals to see what fraction get removed during the pipeline. We want to insert signals as early as possible in the pipeline. In the baseband data would be great. But the most likely place is in the spectrometer output. We want a combination of inertially stable beacons and transmitters on orbiting assorted planets around stars of various spectral types, or orbiting the stars themselves. Signals could be of finite bandwidth or periodic and should cover a range of power from slightly below threshold to well above. The goal is to measure our sensitivity of the entire pipeline across a range of parameters. Here are a few example signals. Up on the top is a transmitter on a rapidly rotating planet orbiting an A star. One on a tidally locked world around an M star is in the middle, and a satellite in close orbit around a planet with a 400-some day orbit is down on the bottom. If you generate enough extraterrestrial signals, you start to get a statistical distribution of how you might expect them to appear in your data. In conclusion, detailed simulation of extraterrestrial transmitters with realistic noise, instrument, and analysis effects allow determination of your sensitivity to extraterrestrial signals with a wide range of parameters. It allows comparison of any non-artificial candidates that you find with the properties of the artificial ones that you've generated. To work properly, this method should be blind. The pipeline and the people involved should not have advanced knowledge of the properties of any inserted artificial signals. Without performing such a calibration, it's difficult to know whether the sensitivity of the pipeline actually approaches your threshold sensitivity. If you want to see the details of one implementation of such a system, check out Anderson, Korpela, and et al. 2025 in AJ.